This is KGW News at 11.
And thanks for joining us tonight at 11. I'm John Adams. We begin with a potential new approach to COVID-19. The CDC is considering changing the guidance that people need to stay home for 5 days after testing positive. That would align with advice already in place here in Oregon. Sydney Dorner has the details.
Oregon Health Authority lifted their COVID-19 guidelines on isolation back in May 2023. OHA says with less severe cases, less transmissions, and more people vaccinated, it's just what made sense. The CDC is acknowledging how much our approach to COVID-19 has evolved, admitting most people walking around already have some type of immunity. As a result, it may update guidance so that it isn't necessary for someone with COVID to stay home for 5 days. That's a policy the Oregon Health Authority adopted in May 2023.
We're seeing a lot less severe disease than we had early on in the pandemic. And given the amount of people who are vaccinated already or had recovered from COVID-19 or both and had some level of immunity, so that contributed to our decision back in May.
The OHA recommends people look at symptoms to determine when it's time to go outside. With the new approach, people don't need to stay home if they are fever-free for 24 hours without medication and have mild or improving symptoms.
COVID can be unpredictable, but we're so far seeing a slow, steady decline, and that the variants that have emerged over the last couple of years, our vaccine works to protect them. So COVID is coming down, influenza is coming down, and RSV is coming down.
To keep this immunity up, Oregon Health Authority says it's important people stay up to date on vaccinations, especially when it comes to kids in schools. Today, Multnomah County held a free catch-up clinic for children still needing their immunizations at David Douglas High School. If they don't meet this requirement by February 21st, they will be turned away from all schools or daycares.
We want to make sure that our communities are protected, so we want to have very low barrier access to vaccines that are needed. And so we don't check for insurance. We have a great supply of vaccines available for anybody who needs it.
For parents who missed today, you still have another chance to get your child up to date on vaccines. On February 21st, Multnomah County will hold their final immunization clinic with Care Oregon Boys and Girls Club in Rockwood from 8:30 to 12 p.m. Sydney Dorner, KGW News.
Well, let's turn to weather now with meteorologist Joe Ranieri joining us. Joe, a cold, rainy start to the weekend. Maybe some sun possibly tomorrow, though?
I think by the afternoon, there's a good chance of seeing some of that sunshine. We definitely didn't see it much this afternoon. We did see a good amount of rain since we last talked at 5 o'clock tonight. And since then, we've seen about 1/10 of an inch of rain fall in downtown Portland. All thanks to this weather maker out here bringing in a little bit of some cool and wet conditions as we get ready to wrap up your Saturday night. And we can expect to see more of those showers heading into Sunday as well, at least for the first part of the day. This is what we've seen so far in terms of rainfall amounts. You can see on the west side near Hillsborough, you've seen about 1/10 of it, or 2/10 of an inch of rain rather, and then over on the Oregon coast, over 1/2 of an inch of rain has fallen over in Astoria and Cannon Beach pretty much since the last 4 or 5 hours or so. So as we look at the future cast, we'll put this into motion. Here we are tonight. We're seeing some pockets of some snow showers and some freezing rain over in parts of the Columbia River Gorge as well as the Oregon Cascades. Heavy snow overnight and into early tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, west side of the state is just going to be dealing with some of those rain showers. The winds will start to taper off a little bit, but speaking of that snow, there is a winter weather advisory, John, in place throughout parts of the Columbia River Gorge along I-84 as well as the Oregon Cascades. Up to 2 to 4 inches of new snow overnight. I'll talk more about that and how much snow is the forecast heading into the next few days. That's coming up in about 10 minutes from now.
All right, Joe, thank you. Well, a potential tragedy was avoided in Hazel Dell when a car hit an ambulance, causing it to roll over. This happened late last night as the ambulance crew was responding to a call with its lights and sirens on. The ambulance was hit as it went through an intersection. Luckily, nobody was seriously hurt, and the ambulance did not have a patient on board at the time. Police are investigating the crash. In national news, a firefighter is dead after an explosion at a home in Sterling, Virginia. He's been identified as 45-year-old Trevor Brown. The explosion happened last night and started with a call about a natural gas smell. Authorities later found a leaking underground propane tank at the property. Several firefighters were trapped in the debris and needed to be rescued. In all, one person was killed. At least 10 were hurt. Several neighbors say their homes were also damaged.
I was sitting in my room and I literally thought somebody hit the side of my house. Something hit the side of my house. I didn't know what it was. It shook the whole house. Everybody ran out of the house. They were scared. I didn't know what happened.
The cause of the explosion is still under investigation. Vice President Kamala Harris is reassuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky over the Biden administration's support for Ukraine and its resistance against Russia. The two met amid the Munich Security Conference today. There have been delays in new U.S. military aid to Ukraine, which has stalled in Congress for months due to growing Republican opposition. Vice President Harris pressed for Congress to pass the aid package. She also touched on this week's death of Alexei Navalny, a prominent Putin critic and rival. He was being held in a Siberian prison.
Politics should play no role in standing for the fact that Vladimir Putin, through his leadership of Russia, has shown himself to be fundamentally hostile to democratic principles. Not to mention what we learned about in the last 24 hours in terms of the killing of Navalny. So this is about where we stand as a nation.
Zelensky also pressed for more artillery and long-range weapons. The conference features security officials from the U.S., EU, China, and the Middle East. Well, back here locally, orcas are now considered an endangered species in Oregon. The state's Fish and Wildlife Commission voted to make that distinction on Friday. Our Ashley Grams has those details.
Just like that.
If you're lucky and you know where to look, you might see some southern resident orcas along the Oregon coast. But these beautiful creatures have long been at risk of extinction.
In decline and critically need every little bit of help they can get.
As of Friday, the species is officially considered endangered by the state of Oregon.
And so this has been under consideration for about a year now, and today was the final action by the commission to adopt that listing.
Southern resident orcas are unique to the Pacific Northwest, and researchers estimate only about 75 are left. One of the most famous, Tokate, an orca captured in Puget Sound back in the 1970s. She spent over 50 years in captivity and died in 2023 before she could be released back into her native waters. While it's now illegal to capture orcas, they still face other challenges.
So these declines are really attributed to a lack of prey and other pressures such as vessel noise and pollution, but not having their primary diet, which is Chinook salmon, has been the main cause of their decline.
Southern resident orcas are already considered endangered federally and both by Canada and Washington.
Although there are a lot of efforts going on, it's a big step that Oregon has taken.
Tara Brock, a Pacific Council member for Oceana, says this new listing as an endangered species will open doors for the state to get more funding to support orca recovery.
Really, it's looking forward to the development of those species management plans and making sure we get really strong plans in place to help recover this really special and unique population off our coast.
Ashley Grams, KGW News.